At a luxury watch store in Clearview, a black teenager happily searches for the perfect gift for his grandfather, a moment he's dreamed of for months. But the moment he steps inside, that joy is abruptly interrupted by the suspicion of the store clerk. And when the watch slips from his hand, she turns that suspicion into baseless accusations. Just minutes later, the police arrive, blindly believing her claims, and handcuff the boy. But what they don't know is that this boy has a powerful ally. His mother is on her way. And when she walks through that door, everything is about to change in a way none of them ever expected. It was a warm Saturday in Clearview, and sunlight spilled through the glass ceiling of the city's upscale mall. The hum of conversation, the low trill of music playing from polished storefronts, and the scent of fresh coffee from the nearby cafe floated in the air as families strolled past displays of leather handbags and sleek mannequins dressed in the season's finest. But for Trevor Bishop, this day wasn't about leisure or window shopping. Today was a mission, one he had prepared for over 9 long months, counting every dollar, saving every tip from shoveling snow, washing cars, and running errands for neighbors who still called him kid, no matter how responsible he proved himself to be. Trevor stood outside Hamilton Timepieces, the most elegant watch store in the mall, its name etched in gold above a towering glass entrance. The interior gleamed like a jewelry box. Mahogany counters, brass accents, and crystal display cases filled with vintage timepieces and modern masterpieces that cost more than most rent checks. Trevor glanced at his reflection. Gray t-shirt, sneakers, and steady eyes, nothing fancy. He had thought briefly about dressing up, but in the end this was just him, and the money in his pocket. Crisp 20s and worn ones folded carefully in a slim wallet, was real. He checked his phone. "Mom, stuck at City Hall, be safe." Trevor nodded and stepped inside. He adjusted the backpack strap slung over his shoulder, then opened the glass door and stepped inside. The store was silent in the way expensive places always were, the kind of quiet that makes you immediately aware of your breath, your footsteps, your presence. A man in a tailored suit perused a line of Rolexes with a glass of champagne in hand. A middle-aged woman with red lipstick and a fur-lined shawl examined a diamond-studded Cartier behind a velvet rope. Behind the main counter stood Bethany Rourke, a sales associate with sleek blonde hair pulled back into a tight ponytail and eyes that flicked to Trevor the moment the chime above the door rang. Trevor smiled politely. "Hi," he said, voice steady, polite, the way his mother had taught him. "I'm looking for a pocket watch, the silver one with the engraved case. It was in the window last week." Bethany looked him over, her face unreadable. Trevor's stomach tightened. She leaned against the counter, one eyebrow arching. "You're interested in that watch?" she asked, her tone almost amused, like she was indulging a child playing make-believe. Trevor nodded, reaching slowly for the zipper of his backpack. "Yes, ma'am. I've been saving for it. It's for my grandfather's birthday." Bethany crossed her arms, unmoved. "That model is limited edition. It's not a toy. We don't let just anyone handle it." Trevor blinked. "I'm not trying to play with it. I want to buy it." Bethany exhaled through her nose, short and sharp, the sound loud in the hush of the store. "And you're telling me you have the money for it?" Trevor pulled out his wallet, opened it carefully, and showed her the cash inside. "I've got $214.67, I counted twice." Bethany stared at the bills like they were counterfeit, her mouth curled at the edge, not quite a sneer, not quite a smile, something bitter in between. "That's very specific," she said, her voice dropping slightly. "Did you borrow that from someone, or did you find it under a vending machine somewhere?" Trevor's face flushed. The air felt thinner suddenly, like the lights had gotten hotter. He could hear his own pulse, loud in his ears. "No," he said quietly. "I earned it. I shoveled snow all winter, cleaned Mr. Watson's garage, babysat. I've been working for it since September." Bethany tapped a manicured nail against the glass display. "Well, working or not, I think we both know that kind of money doesn't usually belong to boys who come in here wearing sneakers." Trevor stiffened. He didn't look down, he didn't look away. He thought of his grandfather, of the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the quiet dignity in his voice when he recited poetry from memory. This watch wasn't just a gift, it was a promise. that Trevor saw him, that he remembered, that he cared. So he took a breath, straightened his spine, and said as clearly as he could, "I have the money, I just want to see the watch." Bethany didn't respond. She simply turned, unlocked a drawer behind her, and pulled out the velvet-lined box as if it pained her to do so. She set it down in front of him without another word, her fingers stiff, her posture rigid. Trevor reached out, gently lifting the lid. The watch gleamed under the showroom lights, silver, engraved, perfect. He smiled, barely breathing. For a moment, everything else faded. For a moment, it was just him and the gift that had been worth every scraped knuckle, every early morning, every cold breath of winter. He didn't know yet that in less than 10 minutes everything would fall apart. That before his mother could arrive, his name, his presence, his very skin would be twisted into a threat. But for now, Trevor was just a boy, holding a dream in his hands. Bethany Rourke stood stiffly behind the gleaming counter of Hamilton timepieces, her hands folded just so, her lips painted the kind of precise red that suggested control, structure, authority. She hadn't moved since Trevor entered, but her eyes had been tracking him from the moment the door chimed. There was a stillness to her stance, like prey sensing a predator, only inverted, misplaced. False. To her, he was the threat, not because of anything he'd done, just because he had stepped inside. And as Trevor stood in front of her now, hopeful and steady, her brow arched in a slow, deliberate arc, one that said everything she refused to say aloud. "What are you doing here?" Trevor smiled, polite but purposeful. "Can I see the pocket watch, please? The silver one with the engraving. The one from the window." Bethany didn't respond right away. She tilted her head, folding her arms across her chest, and looked him up and down like she was inspecting a spill on an expensive rug. "Are you sure," she said slowly, drawing out every syllable, "that you're in the right store?" Trevor blinked. "Yes, ma'am, I know which one I came into." Bethany let out a soft sound, something between a scoff and a sigh, and glanced meaningfully at his clothes. "This isn't one of those kiosks out in the hallway, sweetheart. This is a fine timepiece boutique. We don't carry plastic." Trevor's smile faded, but he kept his voice even. "I'm not looking for plastic. I know what I'm here for." Bethany's gaze dropped to his shoes, then crawled back up to his face. "Uh-huh," she said. "And how exactly were you planning to pay for it? Loose change?" Trevor, jaw tight, unzipped his backpack and pulled out his wallet again. He opened it, revealing the neat stack of small bills and carefully folded 20s. "I have cash," he said, his tone clipped now. "I've been saving up." Bethany stepped back half a pace, crossing her arms tighter. Her expression didn't shift, but something in her eyes turned colder. "Cash," she scoffed. "You collecting donations or something?" Trevor didn't answer. He could feel the sting building behind his eyes, not tears, not yet, just heat. Embarrassment laced with something deeper, not shame, he had nothing to be ashamed of, but anger, slow burning, familiar. She didn't see a kid with a purpose. She saw a problem walking. She saw a thief in waiting. Bethany's voice dropped an octave, laced with syrupy condescension. "Look, honey, I'm not trying to be rude, but this isn't the kind of store where people window shop with allowances." Trevor inhaled slowly through his nose. "I'm not window shopping. I'm buying a gift for my grandfather." Bethany's lips twitched in a tight smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Ooh, how sweet. And what, he sent you in here all by yourself with a backpack full of bills to get him a vintage pocket watch? That's quite a story." Trevor clenched his fists at his sides, forcing his shoulders to stay relaxed. "No, he doesn't know. It's a surprise. He collects antique watches. This is for his birthday." Bethany gave a short, joyless laugh. "You expect me to believe that? That some kid your age wandered in here with cash and intentions, no adult, no list, no idea what you're even holding, and I'm just supposed to hand you something that costs more than your outfit put together?" She paused. "Let's be real." Trevor's mouth was dry, his pulse thudded in his throat. "Why would I lie about that?" Bethany leaned in slightly, voice low and sharp. "Because people lie, especially when they think they're clever, especially when they think looking innocent is enough to get them through the door. I've been doing this job long enough to know the signs." Trevor stared at her. What signs? She smirked. Nervous energy, watching me too closely, asking about expensive items without knowing the specs. And the money. What did you do, take it from someone's glove box? He flinched. No. Bethany straightened again, smoothing the front of her blouse with deliberate calm. You want to prove you belong here? Then don't act like you don't. Trevor said nothing. His hands itched, his jaw ached from holding it shut. Every instinct screamed at him to walk out, but he couldn't. Not after all those months of saving, not after every snowstorm he shoveled through with numb fingers just to scrape together one more $5 bill. He looked at her, straight in the eye, and said, I earned this money. Every dollar. Whether you believe that or not isn't my problem. I came here for a watch, not a lecture. For a second, something flashed across Bethany's face. Surprise, maybe. Or offense. It passed too quickly to read. She turned sharply, unlocked the case, and retrieved the small velvet box, handling it like it might explode. She placed it on the counter with 2 fingers, like she couldn't be bothered to do more. Then let's hope, she said tightly, you're more careful with this than you are with your word. Trevor reached out with steady hands. He didn't trust himself to speak again, not yet. The heat in his chest hadn't faded. The moment was ruined, but the gift still mattered, and deep down, even if he wouldn't say it aloud, he already knew. This wasn't going to end here. Not with her. Not today. Bethany unlocked the case with sharp, precise movements, the tiny key clinking against the glass as she turned it, her lips set in a thin, disapproving line. She pulled out the box like it weighed more than it should have, her fingers stiff as she set it down in front of Trevor. Here, she said, her voice clipped and flat, but underneath it a warning pulsed. Touch it and you're responsible. I won't be blamed for carelessness. Trevor gave a small nod, swallowing hard. The box sat between them like a test. He opened it slowly, reverently, the velvet creaking faintly as the lid lifted. Inside, the pocket watch gleamed like it had been waiting for this moment. Silver, intricate, timeless. His breath caught in his throat. He reached out, fingertips trembling, and gently picked it up. The watch was heavier than he'd imagined, solid, cold against his palm. This was it, the gift. The reason for every snow-covered morning, every sore arm, every chore he didn't complain about. It was perfect. But then, as he turned it just slightly, the slick metal slipped between his fingers. The sound wasn't loud, just a soft clink as the watch dropped onto the counter, bounced once, then hit the floor with a dull metallic ka-chunk. Trevor's heart stopped. Bethany's scream split the air. "Oh my God, I knew it!" Her voice rose in pitch and fury, slicing through the silence of the store like a fire alarm. "I knew you were up to something. You were trying to pocket it, weren't you? Playing dumb, pretending to be polite? God, I should have trusted my instincts." Trevor froze, arms stiff at his sides, lips parting in disbelief. "No, what? No, I didn't. I just dropped it." Bethany stepped back as if he'd lunged at her, one hand raised dramatically, the other already reaching for the phone. "You touched it without permission. Who told you to pick it up? Who gave you the right?" Trevor's voice cracked. You opened the case. You put it in front of me." "Don't you dare twist this around on me," she shrieked. "You people always have an excuse, always some sob story ready." "Well, not this time. Not in my Trevor blinked. "You people?" The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Thick, ugly, undeniable. Bethany's eyes blazed. "Yes, you. You come in here dressed like that, talking sweet like you're just some innocent kid. But you knew what you were doing. You dropped it on purpose. A distraction, right? Classic move." "No," Trevor cried. "That's not what happened." But she was already dialing, her fingers punching the numbers with trembling rage. "I need the police. Young black male, gray shirt, trying to steal. Now!" The words felt like acid on Trevor's skin. "I didn't try to run," he whispered, but she wasn't talking to him anymore. She was talking at him, for the benefit of whoever was listening. Customers turned. One woman near the back gasped softly and moved her purse to the opposite shoulder. A man with a Bluetooth headset narrowed his eyes, shaking his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Trevor's chest tightened. All eyes were on him, as if he were guilty already. The watch still sat on the floor, intact but tarnished now by assumption. He looked at Bethany, her face flushed with the righteousness of false justice, her voice raised and unwavering. "You saw what you wanted to see," he said, low, steady, heart pounding. She laughed, bitter and sharp. "I saw the truth, and the police will see it too." Trevor's hands shook. He could still feel the cold of the watch on his fingertips. That perfect silver timepiece now felt like a curse, a trap, a reason for the worst version of himself to be written by someone else. He looked toward the door, willing it to open, for his mother to walk in, for someone, anyone, to say, "Wait, this doesn't feel right." But no one moved. No one intervened. The customers had retreated behind their fear, their politeness, their indifference. They watched as if they were in a theater, waiting for the next act. The security guard from the hallway stepped just inside the door, looking uncertain, then leaned back out as if to pretend he hadn't seen enough to act. The silence was crushing. Trevor wanted to scream, to make them see the truth. They refused to. But he didn't scream. He stood frozen in the center of it all, watching as Bethany paced behind the counter, still on the phone, her voice lowering now, more urgent, more dramatic, more dangerous. "Please hurry," she said, glancing at him like he might explode. "He's starting to get hostile." And just like that, it was happening. He was being rewritten. From grandson to criminal. From child to suspect. From Trevor Bishop to another one. The sirens came first, slicing through the polished silence of the mall like a blade. Blue and red lights flickered through the glass walls of Hamilton timepieces, reflecting off the cases of polished silver and gold. A hush swept over the store as two officers stepped in, one moving with the confidence of someone who had already made up his mind, the other more cautious, scanning the room with eyes that seemed to register the unease that hung in the air. Officer Talbot led the way, his hand already gripping the cuffs on his belt, his posture wide and dominating. Thick-necked, gray at the temples, he carried authority like a blunt weapon. Behind him was Officer Mason, younger, leaner, with eyes that darted between faces, like he was still trying to figure out what exactly they'd walked into. But Talbot didn't need to figure anything out. To him it was already clear. "There he is," Bethany snapped, jabbing a finger at Trevor like she was identifying a wild animal. "That's the one. Tried to steal from me, dropped the watch and got aggressive when I caught him." Talbot didn't hesitate. He locked eyes with Trevor and barked, "Step into the center of the floor, hands behind your back." Trevor froze. His voice trembled, but he stood his ground. "Sir, I didn't do anything wrong." Talbot didn't blink. "I'm not here to debate. Hands behind your back. But please, my mom's on her way. She's the—" "I said," Talbot cut in, louder now, stepping forward, "hands behind your back or I will put them there myself." Trevor looked to Officer Mason, searching for something. Reason, maybe. Humanity. "Please, I didn't steal anything. I just dropped it. That woman, she's making it all up." Mason hesitated, his brows furrowing slightly. He glanced at Bethany, who was already building her performance like a script written for panic. "He got in my face," she said loudly to no one in particular. "Tried to intimidate me. I felt threatened. He was agitated. You saw it. Didn't you see it?" Her eyes darted toward the customers now crowding near the entrance, some recording, others whispering, all of them watching. No one said a word. Trevor took a step back, heart thudding in his chest. "I didn't touch her. I never raised my voice. Talbot lunged forward without warning, grabbing Trevor by the arm and spinning him roughly. The boy gasped as the officer's hand clamped down on his wrist, forcing it behind his back. "Enough," Talbot growled. "You've said too much already." "Let me go," Trevor cried, panic finally cracking through his composure. "You don't even know what happened." Talbot ignored him, snapping the first cuff shut with a cold click. "What I know is I got a call from a store employee. That's all I need. You fit the description, you were on the scene, and you're resisting right now." "Resisting?" Trevor choked, twisting slightly. "I'm pleading." Bethany stepped in, her arms crossed, a satisfied smirk creeping across her face. "And now he's being combative," she said, shaking her head. "Typical." That word sliced deeper than the cuffs. Typical. Like she'd seen this 100 times before, like she'd been waiting to. Trevor's voice cracked again. "You're wrong. I was just trying to buy a gift. That's it. That's all. Save it for your mother, Talbot snapped, hauling him upright. She can explain it to the judge. I told you, Trevor gasped. She is the chief of police. Bethany laughed sharply, tossing her hair over one shoulder. Oh, please. And I'm Queen of England. Talbot rolled his eyes. Yeah, kid, and I'm the Tooth Fairy. Officer Mason shifted, his mouth opening slightly, unsure whether to speak. His gaze lingered on Trevor's face, the terror there, the betrayal. Maybe we should... We're doing what we're trained to do, Talbot snapped without turning. Stay sharp. Trevor's knees buckled slightly under the pressure of the officer's grip. The cuffs bit into his wrists. The polished floor blurred beneath him as his vision swam with shame, fury, disbelief. He had walked into this store with a dream, and now he was being dragged out like a criminal, judged, condemned, and convicted before a single question had been asked. Please, he said again, quieter now. Just wait. My mom, she'll fix this. But even as he said it, he could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down. His voice didn't matter, not here, not now. In Bethany's eyes, in Talbot's, he wasn't Trevor Bishop anymore. He was a threat that needed to be handled. And outside, in the distance, a black SUV was pulling into the curb, its tinted windows catching the glare of the sun. She was almost here, but would she be in time? The voice cut through the store like thunder, cracking open a storm. I said, take your hands off my son. Everything stopped. Talbot's grip on the cuffs faltered. Officer Mason froze mid-step. Bethany's triumphant smirk vanished like smoke caught in a gust. Heads turned toward the entrance as a figure stepped through the glass doors, heels striking the tile with precision, authority rolling off her in cold, unwavering waves. Camille Bishop, Chief of Police for the city of Clearview, stood in full uniform. Dark navy pressed to perfection, badge gleaming on her chest, gun holstered at her hip. Her eyes, burning and sharp as cut glass, locked on Talbot like lasers. She didn't have to raise her voice again. The weight of her presence alone made the air feel heavier, more still. Trevor looked up, wide-eyed, lips parted, disbelief crashing into him like relief wrapped in shock. Mom. Camille didn't look at him, yet her gaze never left the man holding her son. She took one step closer, slow and deliberate. Let him go. Talbot, suddenly aware of the power standing in front of him, swallowed hard. Chief Bishop, I was just responding to a call, the employee said. The employee said, Camille cut in coldly, that a black boy in a hoodie was dangerous, except my son isn't wearing a hoodie, and what's actually dangerous here is your judgment. You moved in without asking a single question, without checking the scene, without verifying anything. Talbot's mouth opened, then closed. He let go of Trevor's arm. Camille stepped between them, placing a firm hand on her son's back, guiding him gently behind her like a lioness reclaiming her cub. Then she turned her full fury on Bethany. Would you care to explain, she said, voice low and lethal, why you called in a report of theft and aggression over a watch that you placed in front of a 13-year-old? Bethany, for the first time, looked uncertain. Her face flushed blotchy pink, her mouth twitching as she scrambled to find footing. I thought he was trying to... he dropped it, and then he started raising his voice. Camille's laugh was sharp and humorless. You mean after you accused him of stealing and screamed into the phone that he was a threat? After you made sure everyone in the store knew he was guilty before anyone even looked at a damned camera? Bethany took a step back, glancing toward the customers now huddled at the threshold. A few were recording, others stood in stunned silence. I was just following protocol, she said weakly. Camille's voice dropped an octave. No. You were following prejudice. And you weaponized it. Against a child. Trevor, still shaking, stared at the floor, humiliation pulsing like heat across his skin. Camille placed her hand under his chin and gently lifted his gaze to hers. Did you touch the watch before she handed it to you? Trevor's voice was small. No, she opened the case and told me to be careful. Camille nodded once, then turned to the store manager, an older man who had been lurking silently near the back, avoiding eye contact. Get the footage, Camille ordered. The manager scrambled. She followed him with Talbot and Mason trailing behind like guilty schoolboys. Bethany stood frozen, arms crossed so tightly her fingers dug into her skin. Minutes passed like hours. When they returned, Camille's face was unreadable, carved in granite. She looked at Talbot, her voice icily formal. "The footage shows exactly what my son said. He dropped the watch. That's all. No pocketing, no theft, no aggression. So tell me, Sergeant, what would have happened if I wasn't here?" Talbot said nothing. Camille stepped closer. "Would he be in a squad car by now? In a cell? Would you have filled out your report with Bethany's version and never thought twice?" Still, Talbot didn't answer. Camille turned to Mason. "And you stood there and watched it happen. You hesitated. Why?" Mason's voice was quiet. "Because it didn't feel right, but I didn't know what to do." Camille stared at him for a long, loaded moment. "Then remember that the next time a child is about to be cuffed. Feeling something is not enough. Speaking stops injustice. Silence protects it." She turned back to Bethany, who flinched before Camille had even spoken. "If you think this is over," she said, "you're mistaken. I'll be filing a full report with the Civilian Review Board, and if I don't see a public apology from this store, this will become a very public matter." Bethany opened her mouth, but no words came. Camille placed her arm protectively around Trevor's shoulders. "Let's go," she said. As they walked toward the door, Trevor looked back, at Talbot, at Mason, at Bethany, at the watch still sitting in its velvet box like nothing had happened, like it wasn't the match that nearly burned down his future. Camille held the door open and Trevor stepped into the daylight, chest heaving with the weight of what almost was. But not today. Not this time. The footage showed everything. Trevor careful, respectful, and innocent. The moment the watch hit the ground, Bethany's face contorted in dramatic shock, her mouth opening in an exaggerated gasp as she pointed and shouted. But even in the silence of the footage, the truth screamed louder. Talbot stood watching, shoulders slowly sinking as the evidence unfolded before him. His jaw tightened, but his eyes dropped. Mason exhaled audibly, rubbing a hand down his face, the weight of everything sinking in. Neither said a word. Bethany stood a few feet back, her arms now hanging limp at her sides. Her skin had gone pale, lips pressed so tightly together they'd lost all color. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. Because the truth had been pulled into the light, and it was brutal. Camille didn't look at the screen anymore. She didn't need to. She looked only at Bethany, her eyes narrowed to twin blades, her voice quiet but sharp enough to cut flesh. "What I saw," she said, each word measured and deliberate, "was a respectful child who treated your merchandise better than you treated his humanity." Bethany tried to speak, just a sound, a syllable, some attempt at defense. But nothing came. There was no script for this, no way to turn the story back in her favor. Camille took a step forward. "You made a false report," she continued. "You incited fear, you escalated a situation involving a minor with zero cause. That isn't just prejudice, that's criminal negligence." Talbot shifted uncomfortably. "Chief, maybe this doesn't need to—" Camille didn't even look at him. "Sergeant," she said, her voice like ice cracking, "if you're going to suggest I drop this, you can hand over your badge right now." Talbot closed his mouth and said nothing. Camille turned back to Bethany. "I'm filing a full request for investigation regarding your emergency call, misuse of emergency services, false accusation, racial profiling, and I promise you, every local journalist will know your name by tomorrow morning." Bethany's jaw trembled. Trevor, standing beside his mother, watched her. Not with glee, not with vengeance, just the quiet, hollow gaze of someone who had seen, who had felt. He didn't want her destroyed. He wanted her to understand, but deep down he knew she wouldn't. People like her rarely did. Camille gave one final nod to the store manager. "Save the footage. Prepare your staff for interviews. If this store has any interest in redemption, it starts with accountability." No one replied. The room was silent, crushed by the weight of what had been laid bare. As Camille and Trevor turned to leave, the monitor still glowed behind them. Frame by frame, the truth looped again. No theft, no aggression, just a boy, a gift. A moment ruined by the lens through which someone had chosen to see him. And now? There was nothing left to hide behind. That evening, the living room glowed in the soft amber light of a lamp tucked beside the couch. Trevor sat quietly, knees pulled close, his fingers absently tugging at the hem of his T-shirt as he watched his grandfather inspect the pocket watch. The older man turned it gently in his weathered hands, eyes crinkling behind silver-framed glasses as the engraved case caught the light. "It's beautiful," he murmured, brushing a thumb across the surface. "You picked well, Trev. Real well." Trevor nodded, but didn't smile. His grandfather looked up. "But your eyes," he said softly, "they look heavier than usual." Trevor swallowed. "It's nothing." A beat of silence. Then, quieter. "It's just, I don't get why people look at me like I'm something to fear, like I'm dangerous just by walking in a room." The old man set the watch down and leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes steady and clear. "People fear what they don't understand, but you stood tall. That's the real gift." Trevor looked down. "It doesn't feel fair." "It's not," his grandfather said. "But fairness isn't the measure of a man. Strength is, not fists, not shouting. The kind that says, 'I know who I am,' even when the world doesn't." He reached out, tapped the watch lightly. "You gave me this. But today you gave something bigger, to yourself. You stood tall. Didn't let them define you. That's the real gift." Trevor exhaled slowly, letting the words settle. Outside, the sky darkened, but inside, the tick of the new watch echoed steadily through the room. Quiet, certain, unbroken, just like him.